What's up, twisted people out there in the interwebs of the world? It's your girl here, Chauncey K. Robinson, aka Twisted Woman CKR, and I am joined in studio, aka my house, again with my mama, Karen Robinson, the woman who made it all possible because she made me possible. This is your second one where you are in studio with me because you are visiting all the safety protocols, y'all, because, you know, we got to keep the lady, the madame, safe and everything like that. But you are heading back to the East Coast after today, after a beautiful 10 days here in California. And I even took her with me as I voted today, y'all. I voted. Which is super important to do because the world's kind of crazy, y'all, and things are happening. But thank you all who are joining us in the live chat and all of those of you who are joining us in the replay. It is always appreciated to talk stories with you, writing stories, reviewing stories and things, all that great stuff of storytelling and narrative. It's so important to me. And I'm always glad when you all come on the journey with me, and in particular with me and my mama for this one, as we talk U.F.O, episode 9, season 2, U is for U.F.O. Yes. This one, what we're going to talk about is the overall, thoughts of the episode, along with, the particulars that happened and what that may mean in the immediate. But as always, and this is one of the things I love about doing this show, is that it always poses bigger questions than just the show itself, such as existence, religion, and all of that. So I'm really excited to actually talk about some of that with you all today, and my mama, because I'm curious what she thinks about some of the things posed in this particular episode. And let's jump into it. For those of you who are watching in the replay and those of you in the live chat, I want to know, and I'm going to pose it to my mama, I want to know, what is your overall grade of this episode? If you had to grade this episode, what would you give it? And lady, let's start with you.
This episode, it was good. I would say I'll give it a B.
A B? Why not an A?
No, wait a minute, hold on. No, I thought it was a B. I mean, because they went along beautifully and all like that. Nothing jumped out at me.
So nothing jumped out at you in particular. So you said a B?
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like for me with this particular episode, it's like I've said, I say this each time with these live streams thus far with U.F.O, is that all the episodes are like high up here for me, because I think the caliber of the storytelling, of the actors, of the writers, like everything really culminates. And you really see when you watch this show that they have an idea of where they want things to go. They have an idea of where and what they want to do with this show. And I love that. I love that there's a journey that I'm being taken on. And with that said, although this show is light years ahead, in my opinion, of other shows that I have had to review or sat through, I do feel like this episode was a little weaker than some of the ones I've loved before, for a number of reasons. Nothing glaring. And this is what I mean, because I would totally give this episode a B+. And that's kind of the lowest so far for me. I think I've gone with U.F.O, because for me, most of the episodes are A minus, A+. And then the ones that I don't like as much, usually I give it like a B+. And sometimes that's because I feel like they keep things a little vague, or I feel like the storytelling could have been a little bit more compelling given what they were going on. And that's kind of how I felt for this particular episode. I did feel like for this particular episode, it wasn't as, I don't even know. All of the episodes are powerful, but this one, it kind of lacked it a little bit. Maybe because I felt like there were about 3 to 4 plot lines going on with this one. And although I don't mind when they do multiple plots, because I love that when multiple things are going on as opposed to like a one singular one, I felt like this one felt a little bit like so many great things happened this episode, but because all of it was put into the episode, you didn't really get a chance to marinate with it as much, such as with Leland and the fact that he killed his demon therapist, which was crazy, and then ate him. The fact of what was going on with maybe there's UFOs out there, like not even alien existence outside of Earth, higher other beings, intelligent beings other than humans. That was also touched upon. There's some other conspiracy with RSM fertility, which is a baddie that Leland has been connected to when it comes to children being infected with like demoness stuff that makes them kind of off kilter as they grow older. We had the stuff with Cheryl, Kristen's mom. We had the stuff with Kristen and her husband, Andy, and what's going on with Kristen. And then we had Kristen and David thrown in there for good measure too. There was so much in this episode, and I kind of felt like, and it's kind of maybe, it's one of those things too much of a good thing. I almost felt like I was like, okay, maybe you should have taken out like 2 of these plot lines and thrown them into the next one and expanded on that, as opposed to throwing like all 5 to 6 of them in, because they all were great things happened. But because they all were great and so much was happening, you almost didn't get a chance to kind of just take in some of the plot points that went on. There was so much that went on with this episode. What do you think, lady? Do you think it was a little bit too jam-packed, or did you like the fact that there were multiple things going on all at once?
No, I like them to stick to one story, so you could follow it. And then he, like you said, they jump to another one, then they jump to another one. The one with Leland was even funnier.
Yeah, the thing with Leland was just kind of, was nutso. And it was like, okay, cool.
See, that didn't even make no, they also jumped with David and then, when he came to David's apartment. But then David, I wanted them to really stay on that part with him.
With David.
Yeah, with David and Lynn. So
Leland,
Leland. So they realized he was really watching. Like he said, he knows that we're watching him.
Yeah, there was a whole thing with David's computer that also went on, where we find out that his computer is getting bugged. And it's probably Leland listening in on things that are happening to him, and the same thing that they've been doing. Leland, so much happened this episode where it was like, okay, there's a lot going on here. How do we make sense of it? That's kind of what I felt with this episode in particular. But with that, let's kind of go into some of the things. And I kind of want to leave the UFO plot line for last, because I feel like we should talk about some of the revelations that kind of came out about that. So I kind of want to talk about a little bit more of the melodrama, which seems to be happening with Kristen and Andy, Christian's husband. And Kristen brings Andy into her therapy session. Her therapist, who I really like as a character, is kind of like, we normally don't do that. So I don't know what you're expecting to get, because this isn't marriage counseling. So Kristen brings in Andy, and they start talking, and, Kristen talks about, I've changed. There's a reason why I've changed. I think I'm stronger because of my job. Andy's not really feeling that, the video, and that kind of becomes kind of the crux of this episode when it comes to the melodrama, because the video of Kristen has gotten out and gone viral. And we see Cheryl, Kristen's mom, showing it to the daughters, and it's going viral. And then her daughter later shows it to her class, and they say, it's a whole thing of calling them an effing liar. So influences are happening. And so it's interesting, because I do think Kristen is changing. And let me know in the replay in the live chat, y'all. I think we all are very much aware that Kristen is changing. In some aspects, I think it is for the better. I think she is at times, kind of going with what she feels, and as opposed to, like she explained in the therapist's office, she was like, I could have let that guy cut in front of me in line, and I would have a couple of months ago. But if I did that, I'd go home, I'd stew about it, I'd be mad, I'd be playing all the scenarios in my head for 48 hours, and I feel a certain way. But this time I acted. Now, was hitting this guy and violating, being violent to him the best way? But I think we've all been in that situation. I couldn't help but agree, where I was just like, I've been in that situation where something's happened and I've been caught off guard and I don't respond the way I kind of think I wanted to respond later. And in a way, it's kind of like, yeah, that's good. That's empowering. But there's a more sinister thing there because we saw that she lied about her self-inflicted wounds.
Yeah. Burning herself at the cross.
Yeah, and Andy points that out again. He's like, why does it keep happening? And, and even the therapist doesn't know about it. So that kind of got brushed over. But we see that there's definitely something going on with Kristen. And Andy and part of that is because of her situation with David, right? I feel like most of it is her job and her changing. Although I do think there's underlying feelings between her and David, I honestly don't think that's really the catalyst for why her and Andy as a marriage seems to be unraveling. What do you think? Do you think Kristen's feelings for David are the bigger issue, or do you think there's something else going on that's really kind of driving the wedge between Kristen and Andy?
I think, well, for one thing, Andy's okay. I know they got this job, and I guess he's away for so many months. Mm-hmm. And the way she's carrying the family on it. But then when she started working with David and them, she started seeing David as, she started just seeing him as a friend first and all that, everything. But see, what's the little guy name with the glasses again?
Leland.
He kind of pushed that in her mind.
Pushed what in her mind?
About David, saying, "Oh, you really like him."
But I feel like it was already there. I feel like that was already there, though.
But in a way, every time when they came, no matter what evil, whatever, they kept saying David, because I have this feeling they don't want David to be a priest.
Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit, about David's situation, about whether or not he's being priest and how that connects to him and Kristen. My opinion on this, and I'm sure for those of you who are watching, I'm showing a picture of Kristen and Andy at the therapy session. My honest opinion is I think Kristen, up to this moment, up until joining in with Ben and David, that she wasn't necessarily happy where she was in life. True. She maybe was, I think she was, she's successful. She has a psychology building and stuff like that. But I do think there was something where she felt like maybe she had lost the spark in her life. And she even points to her having this job, going on assignments on whether or not something's demonic and things like that. I think that has, sparked an interest where she's like, I want that thrill in my life. I don't want to just have a ho-hum existence. And maybe that had started to be the case. Although Andy had originally told her, hey, if you feel like that, why don't you go out on the hiking expedition and I stay here with the kids? But it's clear that she wants something more. And I think in some level, what's not being really addressed is maybe, her and Andy aren't really as connected as they used to be. They're older to be able to be apart for that long and almost leading almost kind of separate existences, which we saw in season 1 that was going on. We could put it to her feelings with David, but I don't even think I do agree that there are feelings between her and David. But I think if David wasn't there and it was some other almost priest who she had no feelings for, but it was still her doing this job, having the spark of her job, wanting to do things, I still think Kristen would be going through a lot of this, particularly with the issue with her and Andy. So I get where Andy's coming from, but I think the counseling they need is probably marriage counseling. Yes, yeah, Kristen is definitely, there are things going on with Kristen for sure. I agree with that. I just don't think it can be attributed to just her feelings for David, although I did feel them when she did have that talk with David. What did you think about the talk she had with David? When she finally talked to him and they kind of talked about like their thoughts about human existence and stuff.
Yeah, but she didn't tell him everything. She didn't really talk.
Well, no, she didn't come clean about killing anybody or anything like that. That's what she needs to do. But in terms of like Kristen telling him, because he's like, do you have a question? And, what's going on? Because they've become close where he senses things with her. She senses stuff with him. They've become very close. And I love that about their dynamic. And she's like, I think people are just inherently bad. And I think they find ways to to deny that about themselves, but inherently most people are crappy. And David's thing wasn't so much disagreeing with her, but saying, well, yeah, people do bad stuff. And that's why I want to be a priest, because I want to help people forgive themselves. And a way to combat the evilness or the badness in the world is through forgiveness. So it seems like they both see eye to eye that humans do bad stuff, but they both have different ways of going about it.
Yeah, because she feel that, he shouldn't be a priest, but he's asking her why not.
Yeah.
And I don't see what. Yeah, in a way, that's
talk about it for them.
That been his thing to do. He wanted that, and he sees that. And I think he'd be a good priest or whatever, but I hope he just don't start doubting himself.
What do you think? I want y'all to let me know on the replay and live chat. Do you think he should be a priest? Do you think David should end up being a priest?
I don't see why not. He's good looking, but hey, if that's what he feel and really want, I'm for it. I'll let him do it.
I feel like what he's saying he wants to do about helping people forgive themselves and helping people combat what he was telling Kristen about doing bad things. I think he can do that without being a priest, without taking a vow and things. And I do think if he's having this much trouble now about the things he's going to give up, the temptations that he's dealing with. And I think this speaks to a bigger question of priesthood, right? I mean, we've seen the issues with priesthood.
Yes, we did.
When it comes to the controversies and the scandals and things. And I do honestly think a lot of that has to do with the repression. I think, yeah, it's the weakness of the flesh and all that, but we are partly flesh. We have corporal bodies. We are souls in corporate bodies, and those corporal bodies have, weaknesses. And to completely repress them, I think, in a way, you're almost asking for the controversies that the church has had over the decades, right? And so I wonder if it makes sense or it sends the best message that David ends up going to, because I honestly think if David was to become a priest, let's say he goes through with and he's a priest by the end of season 2. My honest opinion is that by season 3, season 4, he leaves the priesthood. They might honestly make him go through with it. But realize it's only season 2, y'all, right? And this is a hit show. So I honestly believe, God willing, of course, that it will probably be going on for some season. And if they let him become a priest this early on, I honestly think the next chapter is him eventually leaving the priesthood because of all the controversies, because of the conspiracies, because of him not agreeing with the leadership and a lot of other stuff.
Yeah. So he's trying to see things.
Yeah. So either he'll do it and he'll leave eventually, or he won't do it and he'll stay on as a consultant.
He'll probably stay on as a consultant if he don't do it. But he see a lot of holes, and every time when he try to ask him, well, let's do this again, they always shutting him down.
Exactly. And I think it's kind of like, do you want to honestly join a organization that you are constantly in a way side-eyeing a little bit? And like I said, I don't think he needs to be an actual priest to do the work that he's doing. Then again, they need the funding, and for him to stay on as a consultant and things like that, that's probably what they'll need. So, they need to be able to pay the bills. So he's got to stay under the church somehow. So I guess I honestly, my honest opinion is that they probably will have him go through it becoming a priest, and then the temptation doesn't go away. And what we'll get is another season or so of him dealing with the aftermath of going through with something that he might eventually leave anyway. What did you think about that hug between Kristen and David?
What do you mean, like?
Well, see, you don't want them to be together. So maybe you weren't paying attention to it.
I saw the hug. But what I felt like, this was just a hug to me. I mean,
just a hug, Mom. Okay, really? Come on.
So he really hugged her and she really hugged him and felt like, something there. But you're right. I don't want him with her. But he likes her. He cares for her. And she cares for him. She got to know him. Mm-hmm. And, I think they can, but I don't know if she want more. I think she want more.
Well, of course she wants more. She doesn't want him to become a priest because clearly she wants to have sex And, that wouldn't be the case, Trant is in the live chat. Thanks for joining us, Trant. Trant saying, can't stay because I'm behind 4 episodes, but I saw you were live and wanted to say hi and that your streams were missed this past weekend. Oh, thank you, Trant. And yes, the streams will be back next weekend for when it comes to Titans, when it comes to American Horror Story, and I'll also be doing live streams for Why the Last Man, which is based on the comic book series Why the Last Man. So check that out if you have not already. And for those of you who are watching, if you haven't already, please do give this video a thumbs up, feed the engagement monster. But thank you, Trent, and do catch up on Evil. There's a lot going on. So some good stuff there. So I said this last live stream. I like the chemistry between Kristen and David. I see the chemistry. I like them. I think it's and this is so funny for me to say, because I'm not usually someone who likes the whole slow burn relationship. I'm dealing with that now with the Titans show, for people who watch Titans, where the showrunners, it's the 3rd season, and they're still claiming that Corey and Grayson are slow burn. And I'm like, come on. Like, you had 3 years for this. So I'm usually not a slow burn person. But then again, I am a Mulder and Scully shipper. And I waited like 7 years for them to get together because there was building for them. And I see it the same thing with Kristen and David. This is only season 2. They both have a lot of growing to do as characters. And that doesn't mean like they're like infantile or something like that. They both have a journey to go on. Kristen has just been introduced to this world where she's questioning her beliefs and things and stuff like that. David is on his journey as a visionary. I mean, let's be real. David is a visionary. He's a very important figure. And who knows what kind of role he will play in the bigger role of good versus evil, but he also has to go on a journey. So I honestly think it would be way too early for them to act on their wants with each other in a serious way. But I do think there is a possibility for them later on down the line to be something to each other in a romantic sense. I just think right now it's really not a good time for them. And I honestly think the writers are showing us that it's not a good time for them. I think the writers are acknowledging, and I love this about that, I think they are acknowledging that there is something so deep and powerful between Kristen and David. But I think they're also showing that now is not the right time. Kristen's not in her right mind, and David really needs to sort his stuff out when it comes to faith and his visions with God. So I shipped them somewhat because I like the chemistry and I would not be opposed to it. But I also acknowledge that if they were to get together, it would be horrible for both of them right now. It just wouldn't end well. And I would hate for them to get together and it would tarnish the hope for what they could be in the future. Oh, okay. So I'm not for them right now. My mom's not for them at all, y'all. But I am not for them right now. Okay, so we got with the melodrama stuff. So let's go into some of the actual like supernatural, or maybe it's not supernatural stuff going on. So we had Leland this episode. He busts into David's room, and he's claiming that he saw the archangel. He doesn't know what the archangel is, but he's claiming he saw this archangel that showed up in his dreams. And so I'm going to show a picture of that right now. And so we get this. I'm showing the Archangel Michael as evil interprets him, which is a creepy, scary looking being. No doubt about it. I feel like that's like a flute inside his chest. That's what creeps me out the most, I think, about it. And so, David, of course, doesn't really believe him. They look at his stuff and they realize he's probably, having the laptop on his lap because he wants them to see. Leland somewhat admits to his demon therapist that it's part of the plan. They're trying to basically, for whatever reason, whatever this plan is, and we got to talk about that. What is this plan when it comes to David? Why is Leland so engrossed in throwing off David and things like that? But Leland comes in and draws Archangel. Now, it seems as though Leland is aware of David's drawings of Archangel. So that seems to be him not really having any kind of thing. So that seems to be what the case is. But it was cool to see that. And I kind of would have liked for Archangel Michael to be haunting Leland in some way. And so what we get is Leland eventually, he's having issues with, Leland is having issues with his therapist happening to be a demon, the demon guy that we saw also in David's visions as well, cropping the grass and whatnot, right? So we see the demon guy, and he's claiming to Leland, he's like, hey, you know, are you really as devoted as you say you are? You seem to be, maybe you're being, watered down by these fake exorcisms and things like that. Maybe you want to be saved. Maybe there's some part of you that doesn't want to be in on this plan. And so Leland doesn't really seem to like that. Eventually, Leland cuts off our dude's head and cooks him and eats him with Cheryl. It's a whole thing. What did you?
That hair on.
Yeah. What did you think of that plot point?
That plot point was, I guess he was trying to prove to him that he said he was reporting to the manager.
Yeah.
So he was letting him know, I'm not getting soft. I'm going through with this, because he asked him, you sure the angel didn't come in your dream? He said, no, he didn't. Did he show up? He said, no, he didn't show up in my dream. But he was saying, well, I have to let the manager know what's going on with you.
Yeah, because he's making notes, and Leland's like, what are you writing down?
Yes.
And he was like, just stuff to tell the manager. Yeah. And I guess we could assume the manager is Satan, perhaps. Or maybe it's some other being. It depends on, what they end up trying to reveal in the evil folklore. And I think this is what I love about the show in its own way, right? And let me know, y'all, in the replay in the live chat, it's interesting because the Leland plot line is probably the most overt supernatural plot line of the show. A lot of other stuff tends to be kind of vague, I think we all can agree we believe that David's having visions, but it hasn't been outright shown that he's having visions because they've always made it something that could be influenced by something else. But Leland's plot line is probably the most overt, straight up, this is supernatural. I mean, if nothing else, he ate a goat, the goat man, the devil dude, demon guy. So it's the most overt, but it's also kind of the most, I don't want to say it's the most underdeveloped, but it's weird because this plot point is the most supernatural, but at times it also tends to be the C plot, right? The one that's most supernatural, which is an interesting choice that the show does, I think, by making it the C plot, this one in particular. Although it's the one that, without any doubt, it is a supernatural plot line for this show. We don't know what the plan is. Leland is very much interested in David, but we're also kind of like, what's the plan here with David? Why is Leland trying to throw David off his game? Clearly, David has, some importance. But we also don't know because they've kind of they've kind of put it on the back burner, the whole thing with RSM fertility, which we'll get to in a second, because it finally comes back up, which was the thing that seemed very much connected to Leland's plan, the RSM fertility, but they kind of put it on the back burner. So I thought this was an interesting choice. It was also interesting that Leland goes to Cheryl, wants some of her blood because, he's trying to use it as an excuse to saying, I kill people and stuff, because the goat man was kind of questioning whether or not he actually kills people. But then he kills the goat man. And so it was interesting, but you also kind of wonder, one, I like the goat guy. So I'm wondering, is this the last time we see him? Because yes, he was a corporal being, right? He was an actual being, but isn't he kind of also a spirit, a demon of some sort? So it's like, is this the last we're seeing of him just because Leland cut off his head?
He'll probably come back.
Yeah. So it's like, he's probably going to come back. Is this going to piss off somebody when it comes to the manager and stuff? Is Leland kind of going off on his own with this? And what role does Cheryl play in it? Because Kristen's mom goes over and Leland's like, I have a business proposition for you. And she seems to be down to listen, which is, once again, and we saw again, she was praying to Eddie, her little doll. And so there's a lot going on there with this character of Cheryl as well. And I'm glad, because it seems like even with the preview for the next episode that we'll get a little bit more of a glimpse into Cheryl. I'm just wondering, when did she go on the deep end? it seems so like abrupt when her and Leland broke up. It seems so abrupt that she kind of got seriously dark with it, you know? And I'm wondering, was that because of Leland, or was she always kind of like this? And maybe is her being so close to that kind of world, could that be what's going on with Kristen, right? We don't know Kristen's dad. I think it's kind of, I mean, from my understanding, I don't know, Kristen's dad supposedly died or something, or he's just not in the picture, right? We don't know. And so it's kind of like, you know, she says, I've dealt with demons before, all this other stuff. So it's like, maybe Kristen is susceptible to this stuff because maybe her mom had some connections to the dark arts when Kristen was coming around. I'm just wondering because it was so abrupt that Cheryl kind of went on the deep end with the Eddie stuff and was so attracted to Leland that maybe she's had some dabbling with the dark arts before.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that? That's just my theory.
She might have, but no, wait, she could have it. I'm not sure about that.
I mean, I think mainly because I just want to know where her story is going. They seem to really be emphasizing Cheryl here and what's going on with her and her praying to Eddie and all this other stuff that I just feel like it has to have some bigger connection to Kristen and her descent. Because I doubt that Cheryl's not aware of what's happening with Kristen. And the question is, if she's aware, you know, why isn't she stepping into having a conversation with her daughter unless she's okay with it because she saw it coming, you know? So that's just my thing with Cheryl. But we do definitely see that she's in cahoots now with Leland again, even if it's not romantic anymore. She seems to be doing this thing with Leland. But I do think Cheryl's going to play a big role in this. I'm just not sure how exactly. But I do think eventually I want Kristen to find out what her mom's doing. You know, Kristen's so wrapped up with her own stuff that it's like Cheryl's doing this whole thing. I want the confrontation between mother and daughter.
It's going to have to come with the younger, with the daughter.
Well, we see that with the preview for next episode, that there seems to be a thing going on, but there seems to be another thing going on with Cheryl. So the question is, when is Kristen going to find out her mom is pulling stuff in the outhouse? You know? Hey, so Betty, thanks for joining us in the live chats. Betty saying it's interesting that Cheryl isn't trying to hide Eddie. She isn't.
No, you know, have him right up there with the candles.
And I think part of that might just be because, you know, it's the year 2021. A lot of people have all types of things in their things that they pray to, Buddha, all of that. And so people probably, people might side eye a doll, but no one's going to be thinking that, you know, she's turned into a psycho, right? It's that new age kind of acceptance and tolerance we have of a lot of different things, which is great. But it also makes it so maybe this thing with Eddie doesn't stand out as much as it should. You know, even though Andy saw it, it's interesting that Andy is so concerned about Kristen that he doesn't bring it up to her. Hey, and also you got your mom watching our kids all the time and she's praying to a doll in the garage. And she's calling him Eddie. What's going on with that? Are you aware that your mom's doing that? There seems to be Andy's communicating one thing, but he's not telling Kristen the whole picture. Kristen's not telling him the whole picture. Cheryl's not telling anyone the whole picture. There's a lot of family strife in that home. And then the stuff with the kids like Lexi and what she's going through with her teeth and stuff, which we'll probably see next episode. So there's a lot going on there, but I guess we'll see what's going to go with Cheryl and Leland, because I mean, what the heck? But I'm wondering where they're going to go with the Leland plot line. Leland wants to bring Cheryl in on it. How so? It's very clear that Leland has plans for David, but we don't know what. But it's very clear David has a very important role. And speaking of David, let's talk about that very creepy vision he had. He had a vision of maggots and, you know, and blood running down his face, him and Kristen in bed. It was not a pleasant vision. What did you think of that?
I thought it was weird.
Do you think it was a premonition because it did happen right before he finds that there seems to be some type of buzzing or something going on, like his computer is hacked. So part of me was like, is he being influenced by his computer being so close to him? But you know.
But no, I don't think he was in it. Oh, well, I believe he was having a vision because he was asleep, wasn't he?
No, he was sitting up. He was having a vision. He was doing he played the music to try to get him into the space. And then all of those really creepy visions pop up. So Betty is saying she was practically having a conversation with Eddie in front of him. Yeah, Cheryl was practically having a conversation with Eddie in front of Andy. And Andy doesn't mention this to Kristen at all. Like, hey, your mom seems to be a little off more than usual these days. You might want to check in with her. She's watching the kids all the time. What's going on? Nothing. But Andy wants to be a better parent. I think he has his own issues he has to do. I don't dislike Andy. I just feel like it's kind of like a pot meet kettle with him and coming at Christian. Yeah, maybe he hasn't changed, but maybe that's the problem. He needs to change. Andy's the one that needs to change for the better to be there for Christian in a way that he's not. So there's that. But Betty's also saying, yes, that imagery was disturbing when it came to David. And yeah, there were maggots. It was not a good vision. My question is, does it count as a vision? I guess it counts as a vision. He didn't just think of it like he had a bad dream. It was actually a thing for him. So this one was, his last vision that I think we all saw, right, was him in the field, Christian walking towards
the goat guy
who was, whacking stuff. And she was basically heading right to be whacked, right? So we saw that. But this one was a lot. And I feel like that was a more obvious vision, right? It was like Christian's in danger. She's being drawn to the dark side. You're watching it happen. Maybe you might not be able to do anything about it.
But see, I'm amazed that he didn't talk about that with her, about his dream and what he
That's
saw.
Another thing. He didn't bring up like, hey, Kristen, I had a vision. Yeah. Maybe, is everything all right with you? No, that wasn't what happened. But in this one, I felt like it was a lot more symbolic than actual, like, obvious to... I kind of want to freeze frame that vision, like each part, and just be like, okay, what does this mean? What does this mean? To me, it definitely wasn't good. And I think it definitely says that there's some stuff on the horizon that may be quite horrible.
Because that's what the sister told him. He has to focus on his meditation.
Yeah.
Because she said, something's coming.
Something is coming. And I think that's what we saw in David's vision. And it doesn't seem to be very good. Death, I mean, that's usually what we associate with maggots being around. Him being in bed with Kristen, that seemed like temptation. Him screaming with blood on his face, what could that be? And so where are we going with this is that question. So Betty is saying there is no real communication between Kristen and Annie. There isn't. And we were actually talking about this earlier, so Betty, when we were talking about, we started with the melodrama of the episode before we got into some of the bigger plots. And, what we were saying is that, we could say that Kristen's marriage is unraveling because of maybe possession and maybe her feelings for David. But I honestly think it probably would have been heading this way no matter what. I think Kristen was very unfulfilled for some time. And one could argue that having a spark in her life, being around Ben and David and her job, is kind of putting the magnifying glass, and maybe she's not as happy with Andy as she wants to be. Yeah, and I don't think that has anything supernatural to do with it on that regard.
I believe that too.
Yeah. Okay, so David's having visions, but it's all symbolic, it seems. Christian is definitely involved, but we don't know in what regard, but it does not seem good. So that happened. I loved it. That was probably the creepiest episode, the creepiest moment in the episode, because you didn't expect it. Like I was saying earlier, there was so much happening in this episode, which is why I kind of gave it a B+, because of the fact that I felt like so much was happening. I didn't get a chance to really kind of take all the new plot points that were going on in, but that vision was out of nowhere. And then the whole situation with the computer. They find out that maybe Leland has bugged their computer, David's computer, and maybe Leland knows that they have bugged his computer. Although I kind of figured that was going to happen. I just thought it was pretty obvious that Leland knew that they were bugging his computer. I just find it hard to believe that they wouldn't know that Leland didn't know that. But finding out that he was bugging David's computer is also something that I thought was new. And so we'll see how that plays out. I don't think that was a throwaway, right? Do you think that's going to come back in a bigger way? The whole idea of the bugging of computers and stuff and the surveillance?
It might come back and bite.
Yeah, I just wonder, like, Leland's playing his game now. David and Ben are playing their game with him. I mean, I honestly, when they first bugged Leland's computer, I kind of thought it was silly because I'm like, he's not going to do anything in front of his computer like that. He just isn't. So I don't think it didn't really seem like it made much sense. But I guess if he wasn't some supernatural thing going on, I guess it would kind of make sense that they could bug it because they would think this guy's doing some creepy stuff. Maybe he will say it in front of the computer. So I just thought it was silly, but I'm glad that it came back around to them, possibly to David's computer as well. So the main thing of this episode, our main plot line, was the UFO thing. And I kind of saved that for last because to me that was interesting because what we got was a lot of things in there in a way. One was it really a UFO? Was there something unexplained from an outer planet? And we got the sense, although once again, they kept it vague because that's what they do on this show. It seems like it's leaning towards this was some extraterrestrial being. But the two witnesses they had were paid off. My guess is by the U.S. government that doesn't want that seems to be also kind of playing against the Vatican. Seems like the government and the Vatican aren't on the same page because the Vatican or the Catholic Church wanted to dive more into it. And it seems like the government kind of wants it to go away. They want to keep it hush hush. And I thought, what did you think of this plot? Because to me, at first, I thought it was kind of out of left field because we've been talking about brain functioning and some stuff that's like very directly religious. And then we got this about UFOs. And by the end of the episode, I absolutely loved it because I saw what they were trying to do. But I didn't expect that from this show, that we talk about UFOs. What did you think, lady? Were you kind of like, UFOs? Are we really talking about UFOs right now?
Yes.
Like, how is this going to be?
But somehow it came into play that after the UFO went through them, one said that she felt closer, at peace and enjoy,
So what's going on with that? Is that a UFO? Is that some other being? I mean, clearly it's some kind of being.
And you see how the church said, we take anything that they say religion-wise if they felt that, it was God or Jesus that, went through them or whatever.
And I think that was interesting. So Betty is saying, definitely think Leland knows, but I wonder if whatever is in David's computer could be blocking his visions. That as well. That's what I wondered too, because the chip that he pulled out, you could hear whispering, right? There was whispering going on. And I'm like, okay, did Leland enchant this thing, and is that affecting his visions? I think that's because I don't know.
He did take the chip out.
He did take the chip out, but I want to ask y'all: do y'all remember in season 1 when David was drawing and stuff like that? It always looked like Leland was in the background of his room. In the room, it seemed like Leland was haunting David. That was a thing. Now that's gone away somewhat, but it's kind of interesting. They never really dived into that. It was just kind of in the background. So in a way, it's kind of like Leland has been haunting David. And maybe this chip is a manifestation of that. But why need the chip if he was already haunting his room? It was kind of interesting. Yes, a possessed microchip. I honestly think that's we saw that with the Alexa thing, right? Remember the Alexa thing with the playwright guy? It was possessed and it was saying some weird stuff. So I think it's possible that technology can be possessed. So I wouldn't be surprised if Leland put some kind of possessed chip on his thing. And so Betty says, I agree they were leaning towards UFOs being real. And we saw that the smell that people smell when it's cotton candy. I don't know if that's because cotton candy, the smell of it makes people happy. Does cotton candy make you happy when you smell it? I like cotton candy. I don't eat it a lot, but
I don't eat it a lot. So sweet, it just melts.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah. So it was interesting. It was cotton candy. Yes, the Alexa from last season. That's Betty. So, what we got was that there's something going on, and I don't want to know what y'all think in the live chat and also in replay. Let me know. Do you believe in extraterrestrial aliens? Because this is what I love about this show. It does pose questions that makes us think about these things? Because I know that there is actually a debate in religions and spiritual circles when it comes to extraterrestrials, right? Ancient astronaut theorists, for those who watch that show, I do watch Ancient Aliens occasionally because I love all things history and religion and stuff like that. They at times there's a few episodes where they talk about angels and God and stuff like that, and they actually point out stuff in the Bible where they say it's actually should be interpreted as the angels being extraterrestrials, right? And then you have some Christians who believe that when people are abducted and visited by aliens, that's actual demons who are taking on the face of aliens to make you think that it's aliens, but it's really demons trying to stray you from God's will, because there are Christians who believe that to believe in extraterrestrials is going against God's will, because God did not create in the Bible aliens or extraterrestrials. He created humans. So there's a lot of debate with that. I'm really curious what you all think, because I thought that's why I thought it was so interesting that the show took this on, right? Because the show asks the question to the priest about original sin. And, David's like, okay, so are we believing in aliens? And like, even Christians like, so does the church believe in aliens? And the church, the priest respond, well, we believe in what exists. And the question of where aliens fit into their religious perspective, such as original sin, which is the idea that all humans are born with sin. And if you have aliens, extraterrestrial beings, does that mean they were born in sin? Because they aren't part of the same lineage that we have of the Bible. So that challenges the church, right? But it's funny because I thought it was so interesting that the show had the church take more of a welcoming stance, that it was actually the government that wanted to stamp down the idea of extraterrestrial, but the Vatican, the church, was willing to dive into it. Hey, Red Eyes. Yes. Hey, Chauncey and Mama. I thought this was the Titans review. Yes. No, Titans is going to be next week. My mama was in town, so I wasn't able. We went out on Sunday or whatever, so I wasn't able to do our regular Titans and American Horror Story, but that will be back, God willing, this upcoming weekend. So I'll be handling 2 episodes in one, because I know Red Eyes just loves when I rant about Titans. So I will be probably ranting about Titans. So check out that this upcoming Sunday along with American Horror Story, y'all. So what did you think about that? That they had it so that the church was somewhat like kind of receptive to aliens. First of all, lady, do you believe in extraterrestrials?
If you ask me if I believe there's life outside of this planet, yes, I believe there's life outside of this planet somewhere.
But I'm talking about life like ours, not like bacteria sitting on Mars 100. Because you can say there's life. I mean, right? Oh yeah, there's bacteria on Venus.
So you're asking like for the flying saucers?
Flying saucers, people like beings like us that can talk to us and things like that.
To be honest, I'm up in the air on that, because like I have never. I believe somebody caught somebody somewhere. I mean, I believe.
So do you believe in alien abductions and stuff?
I don't lie. No, I don't.
Okay. So Betty is saying, I am stressed out enough with this planet. I can't take on another one. I believe you are not alone in that, so Betty. I'm sure plenty of us. There are times when I see what's going on in this world, and I'm like, I don't think aliens probably want to visit us with what goes on here. They're probably like, yo, let the humans have at it. I honestly think we might be considered the ghetto of the solar system. The aliens,
they'll destroy themselves.
Yeah.
We don't have to come there and take over. We have to destroy, so then we can take over.
Yeah, the aliens just kind of, when you roll through a bad neighborhood, like you roll up your windows and lock your doors. I feel like when aliens come through with the spaceship, they like lock the doors. We're going by Earth. Like I honestly, like with the way we do things here, I would not be surprised. So, I actually do think there might be extraterrestrial, just because, and I actually connect this with my faith, that, I believe that if we are to believe that God what they are is it's like this omnipotent, huge being that to limit it to just one rock in the solar system when it comes to intelligent existence, I think that limits the idea of God almost. I think it's almost like if you believe God is like this really huge, powerful being, why would they stop with just us on Earth? And that's as far as I go with it. I pay attention to some theories like ancient astronaut theories and stuff like that because I think it's interesting. I don't lean one way or the other, but I am one of those people who I do not think that acknowledging that there might be extraterrestrials somehow contradicts faith and spirituality. I don't think that, but I know that is something that is posed often with people that, like I was just saying, some Christians think that extraterrestrials are actually just, demons in disguise to throw off humans. And some ancient aliens and ancient astronaut theorists believe that our stories about angels and stuff in the Bible are actually about extraterrestrial beings. So I feel like when we try to do absolutes and say, well, if this is this and this can't be that, you're always going to go down a slippery slope. Mm-hmm. So I just believe, I'm a human. I do not know everything about the cosmos. I don't presuppose to know everything about the cosmos. So I have a belief that, yeah, sure, there could definitely be other beings. This solar system is quite vast and we have not seen it all. So, and that's why I loved that the show took that on. I just thought that was and the way they took it on, because I really was expecting for them to have it so the Catholic Church would be dismissive. And they actually had it so our new character who came in from the government, from the Vatican, the secret service of the Vatican, which was so cool, is like, no, we actually want them to come because we want to talk about UFOs. The Vatican is interested. And if we can acknowledge it, we will start to talk about it. But it was actually the government that was against it. So I just love that kind of twist, which once again just shows how much this show just loves kind of subverting what you think is going to happen.
But why didn't I'm not trying to be funny. Why would you go? I'm still figuring, why would you come to Christian first and it's David and them in the church that's ahead of that?
Who are you talking about?
When the guy came to Christian, he waited till the train went over and he started telling I didn't understand that one.
I think that probably was because he probably thought Kristen was the one out of all of them that would be susceptible to, because Kristen is the skeptic of the group, right? Mm. In a way. So maybe he thought, if I tell Kristen, she's going to actually listen to me. I thought that. I mean, I don't know. The guy that my mom is referring to is, I wrote down his name, Edgar Loudermilk.
Yes.
Who was the guy from the government. And then we had our dude from Secret Service, Catholic Vatican, Victor LeCant, who I think we'll be seeing a lot more of. And I think this will be interesting because he knows about David. And he's the one that brings up RSM fertility, which we'll talk about in a second. But let's see what y'all are saying. Red Eyes is saying, I believe the men in black are real. That's how you explain deja vu. You might be right. There may be a government Secret Service that does not. I mean, we see it, right? There's a lot of things, if you pay attention to that, where there have been sightings for decades now. And in some regards, one could argue some of the technology we've gotten or mimicked could be similar to things that we've picked up from others who aren't here that we know about. So I wouldn't be... when it put it past it. Red Eyes is also saying, also, some people believe when we have weird dreams, we're tapping into another version of ourselves on another earth. I actually think that's something I used to think when I was younger, that when I fell asleep, the other me woke up, and that what I experienced here was what the other me dreamed about and thought it was a dream, but it was really me waking up here. And when I go to sleep, my other me wakes up over there. I used to think that. And I mean, nothing says it can't be, but Red Eyes, you're not completely off in saying people believe that, because I used to think that when I was younger. So Betty is saying the robot Vatican man. Yes, which I believe his name is Victor LeCant, right? So that's our new character that we got. And Victor, Victor, brings up RSM fertility, which is the situation that we got with Leland, the real big plot with Leland about what they were doing with women who were getting pregnant through RSM fertility, and how they were inserting the embryos with demonic influence, right? So you had like bad seeds on your hands being born. And we know that Kristen actually went to RSM fertility, and that's how she had Lexi. Oh. And she didn't know that until they made the connection, right? So, hi, Vera. Thanks for joining us on the live chat. My mama is in studio, aka my house, with it for the second time after her trip here. So, you know, we're back to RSM fertility. And David is basically like, I'm going after RSM fertility. Now, I want to know what y'all think. Do you think Victor LeCant, who was showing him the RSM fertility, do you think that was more, what do you call it when someone tells you not to do something because they want you to do it? Reverse psychology.
Yeah.
Do you think LeCant was doing reverse psychology with David?
Knowing that he was going to go after.
Knowing that he was going to go after RSM fertility. Or do you think Victor LeCant really didn't want David to go after RSM? Because it seemed like he wanted him to see it. Because he even said, David was like, did you want me to see that? And then he was like, oh, you should leave RSM fertility alone. Yeah, but it's like, wait a minute, what?
It might be that because you know that piqued his interest.
Yeah, because this is the thing. David wasn't actually, I mean, it's been 9 episodes. David was not actively investigating RSM fertility anymore, which honestly, I was kind of perplexed by that, why that kind of fell by the wayside, why they stopped investigating RSM fertility, but they did for a bit. For some reason, they stopped investigating it. So I'm glad they're getting back to it, but I just think it's funny that LeCant wants them to actually do it now, right? Yes, Lexi has fangs, and I think that comes from that influence on that demon thing. I think what we may see with RSM fertility, that when they influence these embryos, maybe it's not a uniformed reaction from them. Like maybe like that, like the bad son that the parents ended up killing last season, he wanted to kill his baby sister. He didn't have fangs or anything, but he had some really dark tendencies. With Lexi, it doesn't seem like she has dark tendencies. What it seems with Lexi is that she's susceptible to being influenced by dark forces, maybe, and the fangs. So maybe if they went to each of the children, they'd see different kind of demonic side effects, I guess you would call it, depending on. And yeah, I agree. I think that was definitely on purpose, that Victor was doing that. So Betty's saying, I think Victor wants to find out what David knows. Yes. Vera is saying they have made a lot of discoveries for the church. They have. And I think, you know, maybe like Betty and Vera are saying, maybe on some level, there's a wanting, because they know David, Ben, and Kristen could actually do it unofficially without all the red tape, that they want them to go after RSM fertility. They just didn't want to say it directly.
At the church, you know, and they can't, and if they do find out something go wrong, they could wash their hands and say it was not us that sent them there.
Exactly. And I agree, Betty. Lexi is very open, and I think that makes her very susceptible to these things. But I don't think she's like that, the boy from last season, where he was just straight out. He was kind of evil, right? He didn't mean to be, unfortunately, but he was. He had some murderous tendencies. I don't think Lexi has murderous tendencies. Vera is saying Lexi seems more moral than the other girls. Like her reaction to the video of Kristen. Yeah, she even said, she was like, oh, what's, you know, and I feel like she's battling with herself on that. I feel like Lexi may be at a crossroads at this young age. So I guess we'll see where that goes. Or yeah, exactly. Or Lexi saying, you know, whether or not she wanted to lie to her mother, although Cheryl, Kristen's mother, kind of influenced her to do that, to not do that. So I think RSM fertility is coming back in the picture, and I'm glad for that, because like I said, I do feel like it fell by the wayside. I wasn't sure why David stopped investigating it necessarily, but I'm glad it's coming back. And from my understanding, Leland is connected to that, but Leland also seems to be off on something with Cheryl, as we were talking about earlier. So what's the end game with that? And we are still getting these symbols. There is something going on with these 60 or so demon symbols. And I really do hope it culminates, because like I said about this episode, so much was going on in it that I'm like, okay, we're at episode 9. I think there's a total of maybe like 14 episodes of this season. So they've got to start kind of making stuff connect, you know? I love everything that's happening, but I'm also like, there's a lot of stoves on the stoves. There's a lot of pans on the stove, or a lot of ingredients in the pot, but I don't know what the dish is, I guess, is what I'm saying. And I'm kind of trying to figure out what's Leland getting at with David. Sister Andrea wasn't in this episode, but what does she want David to see? And who is she? What's Cheryl's, Kristen's mom, influence in all of this? Because she has an influence. What's going on with Kristen? Is she part of Leland's plan? Or is she just kind of going off on her own thing because she's just being possessed or influenced by the jinn, the jinn that was on her, right? So there's a lot going on there that I think we're going to see culminate. I think next episode seems to be very focused on Lexi and Cheryl's mom, which might be more of a Kristen's centered episode, which, you know, it's not bad. I love all the characters, actually, and that's the first for me with the show. Usually there's some characters I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a so-and-so centered episode, I don't care for it. But I love Kristen, Ben, and David all equally. So when each of them gets their own spotlight, I'm always happy to see where they go, because the show has done such a good job of making all of them so interesting. So lady, you already said you don't believe in alien abductions. So, do you think this is the last we've heard? Were you surprised that the witnesses got paid off?
No, I wasn't surprised, because when they start asking her questions and she kept saying that, you know, when they asked about what was the smell and she missed it. But I think that in a way they knew, because remember they said that it was, you know, they have always had people through the centuries that told them about the U.F.O. And then you got the captain or whoever is the other army people, whatever, telling them that it don't exist. So it could exist and they know about it, but they're just trying to, you know, keep, you know, they paid them off. They paid the girl off and the other one. I guess the girl they paid off her college tuition.
Yeah, and said she was getting into a new school. I think the other question is, you know, I thought it was very funny with Kristen. Kristen was talking to the priest, and the priest was saying about aliens and stuff. And she was like, Kristen, you know, she always had a snappy thing towards the church. When like the priest was like, well, is this are these some other beings that are higher, or is this a missionary mission for the church? Do we need to convert these extraterrestrial beings to our faith, like we have with others? And Kristen kind of says, well, we saw how that worked out for the Native Americans. And I was like, yeah, that's very true. But then it was also interesting that the priest was like, okay, by all means, give your land back to the Native Americans and and all this other stuff, kind of countering it in a way, a little bit in the extreme, because let's be real, when we acknowledge what happens when it came to the Crusades, which were a mess, and the Spanish Inquisition and, you know, colonialism and all of that, it was bloody. And a lot of times it was done in the name of supposedly the Bible and God. And we all know that a lot of that was not fueled by holiness, right? So I thought that was good what Kristen said, but I also think sometimes Kristen is very quick to do a snappy kind of woke kind of thing, but then she's her own hypocrite with some of the things she gets away with. Like she stopped acknowledging that she killed a man and got away with it, right? Like the white privilege was why she got away with killing that guy, because her friend was cool and the cops, you know, and everything, and she just kind of got away with it. And so that's not being addressed again. So I think it's always interesting when Christian throws out something that many of us are thinking and feeling, but she has her own hypocrisies going on with her as well. But I also thought that was interesting that they kind of acknowledged that. And I thought it was interesting that they had the priest kind of take this stance of perhaps converting extraterrestrials to Catholicism. And I'm just like, how almost kind of arrogant of you to be like, you are going to convert these extraterrestrials to your faith. What if they have a faith that's way more informed than your faith? What if they want to convert you? You know, I mean, that's also an option. Yes, but of course, the Catholic Church isn't thinking that. So Betty is saying, it's so interesting that Christian is a lapsed Catholic and sends the girls to Catholic school. I wonder where they are going with that. I think Christian has some guilt about stuff. She's a lapsed Catholic, but I think in some ways, I mean,
she's going through the route of burning herself.
Yeah,
I think that when you burn yourself, you're
it's like flogging.
Yeah, flogging yourself. So you're asking for, you know you did wrong, and her burning herself with the flow. That's not.
Yeah.
But then she made it sound like she was only burning herself. Oh, that's only 2 times I burned myself. I was counting about 1, 2, 3.
She's done it a few times, right?
She did it a few times more than just 2.
And I think you're right, Sebastian. I think they're definitely probably leading to something with that, or just the mixture of things. Andy was praying with Buddhism, and Christian was kind of like, "What are you doing? I thought we weren't going to do that with the kids, introducing them to things." And
because one of the girls started doing the same thing he was doing.
Yeah, exactly. And so Betty's asking, so was Cheryl a Catholic at some point? I think that's a wondering too. I mean, I was saying earlier as well, I was like, I think Cheryl might have dabbled with the dark arts for longer than we know. And I'm hoping maybe in the next episode we get to dive. It seems to be more about her in this one. She gets a little bit more of a focus. And I'm hoping we start to kind of talk about that, because I don't know. I feel like Kristen may be having to deal with sins of the mother in this regard. Maybe that's why Kristen is somewhat susceptible to this, because of maybe Cheryl's past too. So I think we'll see that as well. And Cheryl's past faith. I mean, what's up with Kristen's father? Where's he at in the picture? I mean, and let me know, y'all, in the chat or in the replay. I don't remember if they said the father passed away, or if he just wasn't in the picture, or if Kristen ever knew him or anything. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I want to know what was going on with that. Who was the parent of faith? Were they both? Were neither? But we don't know. Bear is saying, I'm freaked out by Eddie too. Eddie is creepy, and I'm just waiting for Eddie to come to life. That's what I'm waiting for. Vera is saying, interesting that Kristen didn't mention her husband once in that conversation with David. No, she did not. Yes. And that's what we were saying in the beginning of this live stream. We were talking about, we kind of tackled the melodrama a bit earlier when it came to Kristen and David, because it was clear that with that hug, even though my mom didn't want to acknowledge how powerful that hug was with Kristen and David, I think even if David wasn't in the picture, I honestly do think that Kristen and Andy would be having these problems. I think there's some level that has nothing to do with her other feelings for David, but just her, her unsatisfaction, her dissatisfaction with her marriage, to be honest. True. So Betty is saying, Cheryl likes to light those candles. Catholics like candles for special prayers in some churches. Exactly. There's a lot of overlap with that. So I guess we'll also see. Right. I think there's a lot to dive into. So hopefully we get a bit more with Cheryl, because I think there's more to her past. Like she told Leland, you're not the first demon I've dealt with. So what does that mean? And we know in this show, you can't just take it as a saying. It could actually be literal. Right. Vera saying, you don't rub on your friend's neck when you hug them. No, you do not. That hug was not a platonic hug. But like I said earlier, I don't think Kristen and David are right for each other right now. I think they both have to go through stuff. I see them going with each other later on. I see the show wanting to play with that. I think right now it would be so disastrous for both of them to try to even have anything with where David is with his situation, and where Kristen is definitely with her situation. She got a whole husband and family. She's got to deal with that, right? So, there's a lot going on there, but I am loving it so far. Like I said, this episode wasn't necessarily a plus for me, just because I felt like there was a whole bunch going on there, and I would have liked for them to maybe focus in on just 3 plot lines instead of like the 5 or 6 that was going on. But that's honestly, I have such a high margin when it comes to Evil, because it is just such a quality show. So, but yeah, let us know in the replay your thoughts. And earlier in this live stream, we talked about some of the melodrama, whether David should become a priest. I think honestly the show is going to have him go through with the ceremony in the month's time. I think David will become a priest. I think though that what's going to happen is that later down the line, he will leave the priesthood. And I think that's going to be the next journey. That's my theory. I want to know y'all theory. Let me know. Write down your thoughts in the replay so we can talk about it come next week. And yeah, this is just a wild ride, y'all. There's so much going on. But until next time, be sure to give this video a like if you haven't already. Like I said, let me know your theories because there's so much to theorize. Let me know your theories in the comment section, and stay safe out there. Stay safe, stay blessed. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.